Can you bring the lights back up? Members, lines 812 through lines 817 of the legislation that's before you would legalize just that substance that is essentially Charlotte's Web. It would legalize forms of marijuana that have high CBD content, the stuff that activates the brain, and it would have very low THC content, less than 0.5%. Ms. Figi, I know there's probably a lot of questions for you. I have a few. Just like, walk me through when you first learned that Charlotte had Dravet syndrome, all the different traditional, medical strategies that doctors presented to you, and then specifically what the known side effects are.
Right.
Because I think you can imagine a lot of us are like you. We're skeptics.
Right.
And I think that skepticism is healthy, but we know the negative consequences of many of these drugs that you were on. So maybe you can educate us from a parent standpoint.
The drugs that they offer. I remember my first doctor's appointment to start medicine. They asked me, which drug would you like to try first? That's how untreatable these severe seizure disorders are. That's not reassuring to a mother to have your doctor ask you what medicine to try. So I think right away we knew it was going to be a difficult road, and I was going to have to be her advocate, her voice, and figure this out. We tried everything. Dravet parents and any intractable epilepsy, these parents are pioneers. You're desperate. It's your child. If you have a child, you understand. We're doing all kinds of crazy things. This was just the last crazy thing I tried. We tried acupuncture, tried chiropractic care. I tried all kinds of things. This one worked, and it worked in an astounding, instant way.
Well, are there any committee members or members of the legislature that have joined us today that have any questions for Paige? Representative Harrell, you're recognized.
I want to know about the science.
So if we were to compare something that a medical strategy, any medical strategy, against another strategy, and the strategy B had a double-blind trial and strategy A didn't, strategy B is always more preferable. But what you're telling us as a parent who's been through this experience is that we're not comparing apples to apples. Dravet's parents are so desperate that they try everything from acupuncture to whatever.
With our doctor's approval.
With a doctor's approval.
Without the trial.
Okay, without the trial.
Without the clinical trials, because it's so untreatable.
Yeah, I'm of the understanding, and folks here could correct me if I'm wrong, but we have things on our shelves today, like Centrum Silver, which a lot of people take in Florida in particular. And that hasn't gotten the benefit of an FDA double-blind placebo trial. And so,
which is not a prescription drug.
It's not, nor is this. Nor is this. Well, it's particularly compelling coming from you, Representative Van Zant. I think, you'd be one of the last votes for broad medical marijuana that you could ever get. Is it compelling to you, Representative Van Zant, that there is no ability to get high from this substance? Is that a delineator that's meaningful to you?
Let me tell you how meaningful it is. I pastored an open country church in the middle of Kentucky. I was there for 10 years when I was studying at seminary. All of the fields and creeks and rivers grow marijuana, known as hemp, there because it was a cash crop during the war. I'm older than most everybody here, and I remember that. But what happened then, the hemp rope, the stalks and everything was used to make rope for our Army ships and Navy ships, and the seeds were crushed, and the oil from them made gun oil. Now, that same oil saved the lives of many a veteran overseas fighting for our freedom and for our liberty. That same oil today apparently will provide an isotope or some isolated portion to also save the lives of other Americans this way. And so with that, I yield, Mr. Chair, my normal opposition to all expansion of substance abuse. I don't think this is substance abuse. I think this is using the substance wisely as God intended. I'm for it.
Well, Representative Van Zant, there are many people watching in this building, and your thoughts on the subject, I think, are about as close to dispositive as one can get in this process because, like Paige was a skeptic, I was a skeptic. You were a skeptic. Representative Smith, we've talked about this a little. You were a skeptic. I mean, it is the fact that this can't get you high but could potentially make these children better, is that persuasive to you?
Thank you, Chair. That's exactly the whole point of what concerns me and the constituents that were worried about this discussion coming forward. The key thing is that almost every medicine, as I've talked to pharmacists before, almost every single medicine is a poison of some type if you take enough of it. This is simply a derivative from a plant, as so many other medicines are. And as long as you can't get intoxicated with it, I think I can speak uniformly for my constituency. As long as you cannot get intoxicated from this and be a hazard on the roads or in the community, we would support it.
That seems to be a compelling point. Ms. Miller, will you step forward? Holly Miller. Members, I've asked that the Florida Medical Association send a representative today, and I know Ms. Miller is likely to say to us that the very best thing for these parents is the double-blind, placebo, gold standard clinical trial. Of course that's the case. But Ms. Miller, here is my question for the Florida Medical Association. Is it the position of the Florida Medical Association that the folks we've heard from today should be criminals or not criminals?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. I can't actually speak to whether they should be criminals or not. My personal view is no, but the FMA's position is that we need this to be, especially this strain of Charlotte's Web, it needs to be subjected to the same standards as any other prescription medication.
Why shouldn't we subject Centrum Silver to those same standards? Why should seniors in our state get access to medication that hasn't been subjected to those tests, but these parents shouldn't have the same ability to access Charlotte's Web?
Just like any other prescription medication that our physicians are prescribing, they have been tested, gone through the appropriate clinical trials.
But you would concede that we have OTC medication today that has not gone through those clinical trials, right?
That is true.
And so what is it about Charlotte's Web that that means that it ought to be subjected to more than Centrum Silver?
I wish I could give you a better answer. I am not a scientist. I'm not a pharmacist. I don't conduct clinical trials. I don't know. I do believe,
well, do me this favor, Ms. Miller. Go back to the Florida Medical Association and ask them the questions I've asked you today. I'll join you if you'd like, but I want to hear what is so unique about this substance that these folks should have to wait 5, 6, 8 years, and why we ought to treat it different than an OTC medication, or different than any other plant if it can't get you high. Thank you for joining us this evening,
Thank
today.
you, Mr. Chair.
Who's from FDLE? Who is it? Who's here from FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement? Amanda Julian, will you join us? Ms. Julian, one of the concerns that FDLE has raised is that the testing of this substance would be a difficult thing to do. Are you familiar with the general field tests that are run if someone were to be pulled over under the suspicion of possession of marijuana?
Yes, Chairman, I am.
Are these the tests that you've provided the committee today that one would do on a roadside if there was a stop, incident to a lawful arrest?
They're similar to those tests, yes, sir.
Okay. Lauren, will you give me a hand? We'll provide these. So today we went and bought some hemp substances from Whole Foods, and we've got the tests that you've provided to us, and I was hoping maybe you could demonstrate to us whether or not these substances, which Mr. Stanley has stated contain trace amounts of THC comparable to Charlotte's Web, whether or not they would generate a positive test. I mean, obviously we can't test Charlotte's Web here today because whoever was doing it would have to get arrested. And so let's test the closest thing we got on our shelves that's comparable and see if it's positive or negative. And while we're waiting for this to occur, did I miss any other family members? You, sir? Okay, we'll try to make a moment for you. Are there any others that we've missed? Okay. Is it okay for you to do that to the side? That way we could be taking
Absolutely,
testimony?
sir.
Okay, great. I look forward to the results. How's our magic show going over there? Positive or negative, guys? Some of both. Some of both. So that means that we sell products today on our shelves which test positive for THC at a field roadside test, and we have some that don't. So to all of those who would say, well, if we pass this law, we'll have all kinds of problems with testing, perhaps we need a new test anyway if the things we buy on our shelves can generate multiple different results. So maybe that's a worthwhile cause. Members, unfortunately, our time for this committee has elapsed, but our work is only beginning. I know the Speaker of the House to be a compassionate man, Will Weatherford, one of the most compassionate people I've met in my life. And I'm going to ask Speaker Weatherford to approve for committee work product a proposed committee bill that will contain this language on Charlotte's Web so that these people do not have to be criminals. And I will let you vote on it, and that's what we'll do in February. You will have a chance to vote yes or no as to whether or not these folks should be criminals. With no further business before the committee, Representative Pilon moves we rise. Members, unfortunately, our time for this committee has elapsed, but our work is only beginning. I know the Speaker of the House to be a compassionate man, Will Weatherford, one of the most compassionate people I've met in my life. And I'm going to ask Speaker Weatherford to approve for committee work product a proposed committee bill that will contain this language on Charlotte's Web so that these people do not have to be criminals. And I will let you vote on it, and that's what we'll do in February. You will have a chance to vote yes or no as to whether or not these folks should be criminals. With no further business before the committee, Representative Pilon moves we rise.